Hemshech Chaim Beis, Volume 1. We finished chapter 163. And we're up to 164. But let's go over a few things in 163 that were a little dense, best of my ability. Okay, so first the general Nakuda. The general point is discussing Torah as interface. So Torah clearly is what God used as His blueprint. He looked into it, and with that He created the world. As we discussed, it doesn't have to be that way. The Eibishter can do it. The Torah is the Eibishter, so it's coming from the same bucket. So you have to say that the fact that God looked in the Torah meant that in some way the Torah manifests it on some narrower scope, if you could put it that way. And that's what we learned. The Torah is Medida. The Torah is a measurement, not Medida as in a limited flow, but in a focused flow. The Torah is psukim and it has statements. Yehi oir. So Vayemer Elikim Yehi oir, Vayehi oir. That's his tackle baraisa. So he said, what does the Torah do? It's Chabros Torah himself Elamis. That the Torah is like a derech, a path, and a channel essentially that connects the two. Talk about the Torah. The Torah, I would put it like focused is the best word here, because it's not simtsum as we speak about simtsum necessary to create the worlds. That is creation. It's a process that Havaya without Elikim creates this. Here's the creation process. The Torah has to create a structured world. So the Torah defines that structure. Okay. What he called that in the spheres, that's Chachma. Torah is Chachma. Reisma Chachma Nafkas. That's what Chachma does. So Keser would be like Eira Ein Sof before it has Kelim, Makif. Chachma is the first place, like the last line we learned in Perek Kuf Samach Gimel, like chaps it up. The Chachma, or in the parentheses he said, so Chacham is the first channel outside of so-called the transcendent Keser energy that this begins to define things. That's why it manifests in Yediyah. There's already some type of, you can call it intelligence. It's still a Nukudah, it's a spark. It's an intelligence, like he said, that barely has any Keli. As a matter of fact, he said it has no Keli. That's its Keli. But you can't call it Ayin Be'etzem, which is Keser. You can call it Chachma Ma'ayin Tamatzu. You can call it a Tziyur that has no Metzius of its own. But you can't say it's not a Tziyur. You can't say it doesn't have any substance. Both in the Mashal, meaning how Chachma is down below. As soon as you have a spark of an idea, you're no longer in the Kayach HaMaskil. You're no longer in the reservoir of infinite ideas. You have one concept came your way. It's not Bina. It's not fleshed out. It's not been developed. It's not comprehensible yet. Comprehensible. It's not details. It's not a hey. It's a yud. But a yud it is. You can't say there's no yud there. So there's something there. There's a nukuda. We learned it before also that nukuda is not teifas makom, but it's still a nukuda. It's not the kaitzer shel yud. The yud has substance. In a sefer Torah, it doesn't make a yud. It just makes something that's nothing. It's possible. So yud has to have substance. However, in the world of substance, I think he even said it's the minimum that's possible. Like we spoke about, we can't call it a name, so we say something as the nukuda. But to say it's nothing, you also can't say. So it's a symbol of the so-called the least amount of makim or keli that something can be teifus in this existence. I think there was actually a pedic where we learned that.
Yeah, he said it's the beginning of a shatach. It's the beginning of a kav and then comes shatach.
Right, yeah. But I think there was a Befedish, she said that you can't really call it this, but there's no other way to say, so we say that's how we call it. There was one place he said something like that. I remember where it was on the left side of the page. That I don't remember. I don't even know if it was in this Indian. But you see, Chachma is a recurrent theme. Chachma Bina, because Chachma Bina is basically Ayin and Yesh in Seichel. Moichin and Midas is Ayin and Yesh in the general spheres. Atzilus and Biyah is Ayin and Yesh in the Elamis. So Chachma Bina, Chachma. So Chachma becomes like Torah. So the whole challenge in these chapters is what is it and what is it not. So in it there is Eirei Ein Sof. It's a keli to Ayin of Eirei Ein Sof, of the infinite light of Keser. But it is not Kesser anymore. So it's already now beginning to become, like he says, the bridge into Ishtalshlus, into Gvul. That's the word here. That's like I said, the word here. Chochma Magdala Sa'ir. Like Teira is Magdala Sa'ir. The Eir Ein Sof, in other words, Habligvul. Because Teira doesn't say there's infinite spheres. Teira talks about 10 spheres. Teira talks about Asara Mamoris. There's a very specific structure, the way the Teira talks about the world. It doesn't talk about the Lakus, that so-called Lifnei, before, prior to the structure. Okay. So in Perikuf Samach Gimel, I'm sorry, in Perikuf Samach Beis still, he used the Lashon from the Zohar Balak, which is quoted in Tanya Perik Lamed Hey, HaChochem Eina Bereisheh. So Lamed Hey quotes a big piece of it. We saw that basically that Hashras Hashchin is in Chochmah. Bereisheh, the Chochem Eina Bereisheh, the Shchinta Sharia, Sheira. So the diuk of the word Sheira is a key element here that Rabbi Rashab analyzes. Hashra, we've established, is dwelling. It's not Islapshus, which would mean already too far down, so to speak. Bina, you could say, is Islapshus. Kus is Sheira, is manifests in Bina, is Islapshus. Islapshus has the Maila, like Bina has. He didn't say B'Shveidas that it's Bina, but it's clear that it's very Megilli. Islapshus means it's fully enclosed. It's there. However, as he explained, that's there because it's diminished, and it's much more concealed. Chachma is far more intense. So Eir Ein Sof, the way it's in Chachma, through the Tzimtzumid is Galas. The way Eir Ein Sof is in Chachma is Hashra. So it's Mehusa Er Kameshahu. That's the language, and that's the advantage of Hashra over Islapshus. In addition to the fact that Islapshus could also go too far, it could be so Islapshus that the Malbish, the Levush is given on the Malbish. The Malubish is the Malubish Shelet, and then there's the Malbish Shelet on the Malubish. But in Hashra, as he says, the Mahus is still there, and it could be concealed. That's the key thing. And it's not makif. He says clearly, Nira she'en zeh she'erhu b'chinas makif. It's pnimi, but it's not completely begili. And he explains that even by the great tzaddikim, who are able to have a riyah and alakus, they see alakus, like he says, with the Lashon and Tanya, what was the Lashon and Tanya? She'batel mitzias ozu she'sheiru mizgala by Hashem achad, ha'yashro gamken is galus. That even then, with the Bezgalaboy Hashem Echad, he says it's still not the ultimate. So they have the Mahus, it's in there, but the Mahus Mamish, like he explains, Riyas Ayin Mamish, that will be lost, that's not there yet. And then he proves it in the next Perek with Moshe. Moshe was Yisei Abba, so it's Chachma. Moshe's Teira, of course. And still, Unachnuma, and still, Panei Lo Yiro. Clearly, there's something he's not seeing. What's Panei? Pnimis HaChochma. So there's the Chetzenis HaChochma, that's Malbish to the Zreyus of Arachampin. So the lower levels of Arachampin are revealed in Chochma in a more slapshus way. That Moshe saw. That's Achere, Reisas Achere. Well, Panei Lo Yiro is Pnimius Arich, or essentially Chochmas Timo, which is Atik, Pnimius Kesed. And that, Panei Lo Yiro. That's a Ziyas Muhus. Then so now let's go over a few pieces that and basically that's going to be Chochmah, this interface between these two realities. Then there was that additional piece from Sifra Ditzin Yusna, where he says the mashal that he brought earlier, which I should have mentioned, which is a good mashal for this. Meichin, in the mind rests the neshama, and yet it doesn't understand the neshama. So you see Hashra, it's there, but it's not completely revealed, at least not in a comprehensible way. Yediyas HaMetzias, as he called it. That we know the existence. That mashal that Rizal uses on Radlo, not on Chochmah. So he says that there too, there's also, in other words, the same idea. Obviously in a far higher level. It's Lo Yoda. It does not comprehend, because it's higher than Hergish, as he put it, the whole explanation. He says that's also Ashra, and the piece actually, the Kulim Yedeisi, I read it again. It's quite direct. It's just we were Parkinson so much. What he's basically saying is that, in the contrary, that whatever happens, L'asad Lavei will happen at all levels. In other words, the Chiddush, let's say by Moshe, there'll be a Pona Yero, that he'll be able to see the Pnimius. That he said there will be the Riyah Mamish, that you'll see literally with your eyes, you'll see with it won't be just seeing with the Seichel, but it'll be like seeing Mamish. So that will happen on all levels. That's Kulim Yedesu, that's his Chiddush here. So all levels, even Atik, that Lo Yada will also have a Chiddush. What will be the Chiddush? Not in the Etzem Adover, that in Atik there will be a Diyah. We said it yesterday, but I just read it again. It's pretty straightforward. Which immediately can also apply to Chachma. That which Chachma today does not have in Yediyah, that's only in a form of Hashra, Paneh Lo Yira, the Pnimis you don't see, L'asad Lavei, that will come to Yediyah. So basically, what is the Chiddush here is that it's even in Atik, obviously. Which means essentially what we spoke about, the interface is complete. In Atik, the Chiddush, as we said, is Mamayla, that even Lo Yada, which is higher than Yediyah, will come into Yediyah. And Chachma is the other way around. Even that which is lower than Yediyah, because it can't yet comprehend the Mahus of Elikus, will also, that itself will also be known to it. Okay. It's basically the bridge of the two realities. Fine. Then he went back to Chachma, that there's Chachma Maisa Bereshis. There you only have a reflection, and then this Chachma is the Atzmus Satera, that's in Teira. Even when you take Chitzenius Satera, in other words, Nigla, it didn't say Nigla Beferish, but it seems that even the outer, you're also getting the inner. And that's Zeh Keli Vanvehu. Zeh Keli is Zeh. You point to it. That's Yediyah. And from that, Kihu Zeh, from that you come to Anvehu, Anivahu, that you can unite even with the Hu. He said, Ani and Hu are the two levels of Keser. Ani is Ayin, the Ayin of Chachma, Ayin to Matzah, the lower level of Keser, and Hu is the dimension that is beyond. That's in the Lashon Nishtas, from distance. Hu, and the Fnei Tzimtzum is Hu v'Shmoi, Ispashtus and Etzem. Okay. The next piece that we had a little issue with was Yediyas HaFlah, which frankly I didn't really resolve yet because I didn't have a chance to look at all the earlier places. But clearly, it's clearly that the two levels are Inyan Afla, Yediyas Afla, Efen Afla. But I'll get back to that because I didn't really have to look at it inside. I'll look over Shabbos. Fine. Then there was the final thing, the parentheses, which I also stopped on, where he continues on with Moshe, that this is the Efen HaBitl of Chachma. So Chachma has an Abitl that is, again, because of interface, it has like this double contradiction, or this paradox. On one hand, there's Tzir, on the other hand, there's total Bitl. In Keser, there's no tziyur. There's nothing. It's complete nothingness. In Bina and lower, there's too much tziyur. And Chachma is that middle ground where there is already in a Kudah, there's something there, but it's completely bottle. So it's not the bitl of Makif. That's kol v'kol. That's complete nullification. Bitl Chachma Shabbat Mitzvah L'Gam Kol Mokum Hari Be'ezet Tziyur. And he brought with Moshe Rabbeinu, because you see Moshe was completely bottle. Spoke to God face to face. It's not a contradiction, by the way, to Paneh Lo Yiro, clearly. And nevertheless, he stood in his ground. He stood upright. He was, in other words, completely conscious and awake, and able to be himself and receive that. So that's Yediyah Pnimis. So there is a Pnimis Dika Metzias. There's a Pnimi here. It's not a nullification of the identity, and yet there's complete bittul. Now, there's the parentheses. He says, "In Vayd it's Meich Shalt Alev Al Pnimis Alev." As Gabes Prince Gadol Samechel is Prince Sasher Prince Tzir. This piece I still have not figured out what it means exactly. It sounds to me Meich Shalt Alev that there is a Metzias, there's a Meich and there's a Lev, and there's the maturity of the mature mind, which is understanding and comprehending that it's maturing the midas. At the same time, because he's completely governing the heart, his whole life is dedicated to Elokus. That's what it sounds like to me, is what he's saying. So Mechshal Talalev, Chochmah Shelet, in other words, on the Midas, right? And it's not like nothing is there. However, it's completely aligned to the Ratzon Hashem, to the divine will. And then he finally said in Tanya Perikutes, he's medayik the lashon, emphasizes the lashon, lo yishem men u'umah melchusa mitzius harisha, that the bitl of Chayach HaChochmah that completely nullifies. It doesn't say that nothing remains. It says nothing remains from his first muhus u'mitzius harisha. In other words, when a person enters into the world of Chachma, he comes with a certain muhus and mitzius. He's a muhus, he's a personality. Chachma brings a bitl out of him, and nothing from his first personality remains. But it doesn't say nothing at all. What happens now it's a different personality, different siyur. That's his Dr. Kleiman. Okay, so this is Chachma. It has Yediyah, there's comprehension already, it's intelligence, but it's an intelligence that's barely there, because it's just right out of the source. So Chachma is that first place where the divine Kesser of Ayin begins to manifest, as he says, in the form of Hagbala and Pnimi Be'elamus. Chachma is that stepping stone. Okay.
That includes Chachma Tzumah, right?
Not necessarily. Actually, Chachma Tzumah is in the form of Hashra, he said. It's not.
Yeah.
It's in the distance. It's not revealed. Chachma Tzumah already relates to Atik more.
But somebody was in the morning shift. Somebody was telling me that Chachma Tzumah isn't really Chachma. It's just called that.
What's that? What we're discussing here? I don't want to mix two things. It's a different Maimarim, different picture. We'll get there. They'll be step by step. I don't think one can understand Chachma Tzumah if they don't first understand Chachma Geluya. Conscious wisdom. Okay. Any questions? Comments? Okay, so the Haflah needs to be explained. The Mechshal Talev, I think I explained now. I think that's Pshat. So look in Tanya again. It could be he's referring to something in Tanya. In a way, you could even say he's hinting to the answer. Why does it say Moshe spoke to God face to face, and then it says, upon in my face you cannot see? Because the face to face Moshe was speaking is, it says, so there's Chochma there. So you cannot call it Primis Atik, Primis Chochma. Panim upon him here is referring to what he's able to reveal, what he's able to see. It's clearly not the higher Panim. It's Panim relative to, I guess, what others would see. No, it's Chochma of Atzilus to Arich, if anything. Okay.
When we talk lower than Atzilus, and then Tzimtzum, then we say that who is the higher Dargeh. When we talk before the Tzimtzum, we say who is the lower Dargeh, right?
There's no rule like that.
No, but it makes Hayahu Shmei B'Vat. So who is the lower Dargeh?
No, Shmai is lower than Hayahu.
But Shmei means
Hayahu, Shmai, Lava, who is higher than Shmai? Who's always higher than Shmai? That's a rule. The question is where Ata fits in. Sometimes you say Ata Hares Ladas, Ata do Atzmus, because Atzmus is Lashon Neichach, Atzmus is everywhere. Sometimes, if you go the way he's speaking here, you could say there's a level before even who, Lo Yisyada. Completely, even he himself is not aware of it. Then there's a level of who, there's a little awareness, but it's not there. And Ata would be already revealed. So you can go like that. Ata hu Shmei Levatcha, we learned this. So there, I remember already, I think there Ata was higher. He doesn't really go into Ata here. He talks only here about Hu and Shmei.
I think I always learned in Yeshiva that Reisha is Leisiyada. I mean, it's unknowable for us, but now we're learning that it means that it's itself.
It says many places. No, it says many places. Reisha said the Gamba Atzmei Lo Yoda.
Gammas when you're
Yeah.
It's a pinch that.
That's not, no, it says in many places.
Yoda is Shem is Sabagranicum. This is Shem this is beyond, it's more amorphous.
The Chiddush of Rish Radlo is not that lower levels don't know it. Lower levels don't know Chachma either, we spoke. The Radha Chiddush is that it doesn't know itself. Beyond awareness.
Almost looks like
Yeah,
a level,
but
that's,
need
a
to
level
know.
that's unknowable. You know?
Because awareness.
That's a basic, that's a simple. But
That's job to know.
it says clearly, Lo Yada V'Lo Yisyada. Both level, both.
Oh, but both is true.
Yeah, but I'm saying the first one's not a Chiddush. That Tzilus is not knowable by Biyah. That law has in it a far deeper. It's in the state of unconscious. It doesn't need to know. It's it.
That's it.
When you're it, you don't need to know it.
It's like if you're the president, you don't have to know all the dirt that goes underneath
Ili Yudaitiv HaYisuf.
the Havel. You don't have to know all the stuff that's going on underneath. Because, you know.
You don't need to be reminded when you wake up in the morning that you exist. Maybe some people do, especially if they're a little inebriated, right? You don't need to be reminded that you exist. You are, therefore you know. You need to be told that someone else exists. There you know, and therefore he's it. By you it begins, I'm it, and I don't need to know that. You don't need to be made aware of something. Okay, let's continue.
In Kuftas, he speaks about the Yud and in relation to Radlo.
Kuftas.
In Kuftas.
There's the Baruch Shamar there. Yeah, of course. Yeah. That was that was the second place he brought Baruch Shamar. Yeah. Right here, yeah. Yeah, that was a complicated chapter. Yeah. It was the beginning of Matseva and Gal, the whole piece there about Nekudis, Pashtusa Dahay Nekudis Sadafka. Very good. Yeah, it's connected to this. I got to go back to that. That's also going to help. Yeah. Matseva, that was the Matseva. Malchus Nekuda, the Yaakov took Malchus, which was a Nekuda, he made it a Patzuf. So it's a whole explanation of the Nekuda of Malchus.
Standing that Yud, basically.
But remember, here we're talking the Nekuda of Chachma, so it's higher than that. But, you're right, the Shadish of Malchus is in Adlo. Brings the Baruch Shamar. Okay, so let's continue on. Chapter Kuf Samach Dal 164. Omnom. Any chapter that begins with Omnom is telling you. However, well, if you think you got it, we're going to now throw you the other direction.
Start over.
Omnam begins Chochma the Teile begins Chochma Shalamayla Matzilus. Now he's climbing higher. To explain Teire, if you remember, he said Teire Chochma Nafkas. Teire comes from Chochma. So we discussed Chochma Gluya, the Chochma that's conscious, the conscious wisdom. Now he's saying Teire really is from Chochma that's higher than Atzilus. V'hima mutzaliyas isavas and etzolim eidin sabarachu. So Chochma of Teira, in other words, is higher than the Chochma is Chochma shalamayla matzilus. And that's the interface between the creation emanations, the bringing into being of the emanations from Eid Ein Sof, from the infinite divine light. I'm just looking back a moment. He said, "Okay, this is the Chochma Maaseh Bereishis." the Chochmah and Torah. Okay, we'll see where it goes with this. Now it says in Eitz Chaim, in the gate, it's called Seder Abiyah. Tzilas B'riyat Yossi, chapter 3. The Mashakos of Kulam b'Chochmah Sisa. What it says, Kulam, you created everything with wisdom. You made everything with wisdom. What does this refer to? This Chochmah that with which you made everything is a Chochmah that's higher than Atzilus. V'hainu b'chins Chochmah da'ak. So we're not talking Atzilus, Chochmah of Ak. So there's a beferish source in Eitz Chaim that says that the Chochmah that's higher than Atzilus. The Ein Sof Aydei Slapshusi b'Chochmah da'ak hu mislabish b'Atzilus. The infinite light, energy, through manifesting in clothing in wisdom of Ak Adam Kadman, it then manifests in Atzilus. So he's now climbing the ladder and going to the source. So we started with Chochmah, and now we're going to Chochmah of Ak. He didn't explain yet the difference between the two, but that's going to be a big part of the continuing Hemshech. We really even didn't discuss Ak a lot, except one place, if you remember, spoke about the Makifim. So Keser of Ak, he spoke Ak as being the Keser Kloli. So he said the effects of Ak on existence. Not Mesiris Nefesh. That's not Mesiris Nefesh. That's the effect of Tehira.
There's two.
There are two things in Ak, right? You're right. The second thing is affects the Mesiris Nefesh. The first thing that affects that there's some awareness.
That's in Samach.
Yeah, in the Samach chapter 60. Yeah. I'm just mentioning it, but Ak is not yet. But Ak is going to be a critical part of this whole thing as well, because it's on a higher level, the interface, and so on. So we're starting to climb here. And Chochmah da'ak. So in other words, there's a manifestation of Chochmah of Ak from what's higher than Ak, Adam Kadman, and then there's lower as it goes into Atzilus. The Eitz Chaim doesn't say it's Chochmah D'Teira. The Eitz Chaim just says there's a Chochmah which God created everything that's higher than, that's an Ak. So it says, no, that's the level of Chochmah D'Teira. So Chochmah D'Teira is not Chochmah of Atzilus, it's a Chochmah of Ak. The Gavatera Nemer Kasher Yemer Moshel HaKadmeni. He's going to now prove that. Because when we say a Raisa Chochmah Nafkes, the Teira comes from Chochmah, it doesn't say which Chochmah, which level of Chochmah. Is it Atzilus? Is it higher than Atzilus? We did learn before, right? There was Teres Atzilus, Teres Abiyah. What was that? That was.
But isn't the first manifestation?
What was it? What was that? What would we learn there?
The Torah everywhere was Atzmi. It would manifest differently, different levels.
But what was the topic about?
Mikra, Mishnah, and Gemara.
Yeah, okay. Excuse me. What are you saying? What are you asking?
No, when we say Hu Amadu Hu Yedeh Hu Yedua, and the Rambam says, and the Machlekes between Maharal and the Rambam, and the Chassidus is Matavich that it's talking about the Kelim of Atzilus. So the first manifestation of Chachma is really Chachma Atzilus. I mean, higher than that, it's not really Chachma. I mean, it's like more of a Shem.
He's going to discuss this at length. Because as I said many times, we're not just talking level. Even Chachma Vasiya is ganz fine.
Yeah.
So you clearly have to understand the difference. I don't think we should go there yet because he's going to explain it. Ak, technically you don't say they're Kalim yet, even in Ak. Remember, just for the record, maybe I will say one thing. Okay. What makes the Chachman Atzilus is also a question.
Because whatever it's called, whatever the Keli means,
but Ak is already after the Tzimtzum, so there you have something in that context. So the Ak, as I mentioned several times, and we're going to learn this at length, Ak is a snapshot of existence. It's the map, it's the blueprint. That's why he's saying it's Chochmah of Ak. It's a blueprint. When Kudsha Brich is talking about Raisa, is talking about Ak. What is a blueprint? So remember, we have Shir Atzmei B'Koyach. There's the Bligvul envisions. That's not a blueprint. That's an artist in his own mind envisioning one particular image. There's no map yet. He didn't make a blueprint. didn't make an outline. And that stage is before the Tzimtzum, so all you know is the divine reality. Divine reality includes the power of finite energy, as we learned. Eir HaGvul. Then comes the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum changes everything. The biggest radical jump in all of Hishtashlos is not Atzilus to Biyah, it's not Ak to Atzilus, it's Lifnei Tzimtzum to after the Tzimtzum. That's why he says that as Meishim she'in arech Atzilus, legabe Asir, legabe Atzilus is ein arech to Ein Sof. The same thing is about Ak. Yeshem she'in arech Asir to Ak is ein arech to Lifnei Tzimtzum. But Ak is the first emergence of this Shir Atzmei B'Keach, of the 10 hidden spheres, in some type of, we'll call it blueprint. Now, it's not a physical blueprint, obviously. It's not even a spiritual blueprint. But it's something that we can relate to. It would be like if you were able to enter the world of Machshava Gdum Medak, like we say by Shgacha Pratis, that even a leaf turns over, it's all Machshava Gdum Medak. What does that mean? If you were able to enter Machshava Gdum Medak, you would enter called the engine room. The engine room, not in Elokuz before the Tzimtzum, where there's no engine at all, there's nothing there. There's just a pure energy. Ak would be that there's some type of outline or blueprint that encompasses all of existence, from beginning of time till the end of time. When Adam was able to mistakel min ha'elam ad ha'elam, when Moshe sees ad yama achrin, ad yema achrin, they're going into Ak. In the biggest sense. Sometimes it says they're going to Atzilus, because Atzilus is also higher than regular Zman. But Ak is the whole picture. Remember, Ak is the we called Keser Kloli. It's not the Igul HaGadol. The Igul HaGadol is the sphere, the energy before the Tzimtzum. Ak is the sphere right after the Tzimtzum. So, if you talk about the outer rim, is the Igul HaGadol. The inner rim, meaning the inner, think of it like, if you're able to go to the edge of existence, and you're able to draw a line, a circle, that would be Ak. All of existence sits in there. So Ak is not yet in a state that you can say it's a structure. It's equivalent of a blueprint. The blueprint has everything in it, but what could you do with it? There's no you can't make a dira b'tachtenim in a blueprint, but it's all there. And it's all there now already in some manifest state. How to understand that is not easy, but you have to think of it the most abstract possible way. Atzilus is a structure. Atzilus has 10 spheres, Eris and Kalim. So it's not our reality, but Atzilus is the perfect existence. Ak is more than the perfect. Ak is the blueprint of existence. So if Atzilus is the perfect structure, Ak is the blueprint of the structure. And a blueprint is technically really still Oyer. What do you have in a blueprint? Literally, when you have a blueprint, an outline of the let's say the artist envisions something, then he goes and makes a sketch. What do you have from the sketch? All you have is the basics. You have everything is there, but it's not there because it's not been built yet. When architects make a blueprint and then someone goes and follows the blueprint, it's all there. They can show you every door and every window and every electrical outlet. Nothing is missing. Everything is going to follow the blueprint. But what's the blueprint? It's not a structure. But what we have now is at least something to follow. Let's say, God forbid, here's the beauty. Now, what's the beauty of a blueprint? Now you build a structure, and then someone loses the blueprint. Okay, fine, the structure is standing. But what happens? Someone damages the structure. Like we learned, Chet Eitzadas. Someone plays around with the wiring. Someone demolishes a room. Without the blueprint, you don't know how to fix it. You don't know what to do. I mean, you can patch it up. But the blueprint remains the point of reference, so to speak, for all of existence to align itself to what God wants. Now, Atzilus is the perfect reality. But remember, Atzilus is going to be compromised as it goes into Biyah. And it goes into Biyah, there's going to be Chatayim, there's going to be, this we learned, there's going to be distortions. That's why the Ovis have to come and realign it to Atzilus. But what are they realigning it according to? Who tells you what to realign it? Ak is the Torah.
That's all Ashkacha. All the Ashkacha that exist forever, including the misalignment, is an Ak.
Yeah, the misalignment, you got to be careful how you would explain that. I know you're going back to Neir Alila, right?
And that's a sort of,
I see the Shittase.
And Ak is also the source of Bechira, because the Rebbe said that it's both.
Well, no, in Perek Samach, by the way, he explained, because Ak is so removed, also the blueprint does not affect the structure. You can build a structure and do whatever you want with it, even if the blueprint says don't do it. Because the blueprint is not holding your hand.
It's also part of it.
No, that's not correct. It's not. Then you don't need Asiya. Then you don't need a Yesh. Then stay an Ak, and let everything play itself out there. You need a reality where it plays itself out that doesn't know the blueprint. We live in the house. We live in the structure.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
We know the blueprint.
When you look in Torah, you start learning what the blueprint says. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
still have the chiyuv to go against Torah.
No, of course. But that is not. He explained before. Even though Ak has it all, because Ak is removed, it doesn't affect our hand. It doesn't touch us. That's the key. He said this in chapter Samach. The Meir Alil that you learn about, I tell you, until you don't understand it the way it's you're going to have a distorted version of it.
A leaf. Every leaf is,
The leaf is not bchira. It's true. How you walk the street is not free choice, but whether you're going to do this or that, that's not a contradiction. A leaf turns into what's
That equates the two. You said
nowhere does bchira is good and evil. Leaf in the wind is neutral. You can't equate the two. Where does the Rebbe equate that the way a leaf turns, that's how we make choices?
He said once, and I mean, I'm not going to argue the master in this, but I thought he said once.
The Rebbe cannot contradict what it says in the Rambam.
Two sides of the same coin, so to speak.
I never heard this.
About this, and that's why.
And then they're actually two separate things. One is not related to the other. Hashgacha Pratis does not affect your bechira. That's the point. Not they're the same thing. The Hashgacha Pratis only affects whether the Rambam says it in very black and white terms. Whether you're born tall or short, wise or not so wise, wealth or not wealth. That is no bechira. And just like you don't choose what color eyes you'll have. But how you'll use what you were given, for good or evil, is absolutely free will. But it's not. Hashgacha Pratis does not affect free choice. That's the bottom line. That's the foundation of Judaism. Those that teach this idea differently are distorting the sichos of the Rebbe. I know them quite well. Ner Elil B'nai Adam never took away bechira. Bechira is the Rambam.
Not to take it away. No, you completely have bechira.
All you know how many
at a high level, at the same level.
You know how many books talk about the question: if God runs the universe, how is there bechira?
I understand that.
Why do they ask this question? Why don't they just say what you're saying? Huh?
I'm grappling because to me that was the biggest kiddush, and somehow resolved it when I learned this. 25 years ago or something.
I'm not having what he's saying.
He's trying to say that even your choices of good and evil are chosen by God, not by you.
No, because we have a godly element, and our choice is the Hashgacha Pratis at the same time.
So why do we have other explanations than that? Tell me.
You can't have any other explanations that ever satisfied me. Nothing ever satisfied.
Fine. But anyway, the discussion, this is completely irrelevant to us here.
When you mentioned the leaf,
and I go back again. Hashgacha Pratis is not a contradiction to bechira, but it's not bechira. There is no hashgacha.
But it's the same level. It's the same.
This is irrelevant to our discussion, and on the contrary, it's just confusing.
Saying is bechira part of Ak?
Perek Samach, he's bringing another idea that's not what it says in Ayin Beis. That's what bothers me. Ayin Beis in Perek Samach says Ak doesn't affect because it's detached. That's the reason, and it's a completely legitimate reason. What you're saying, if anything, is connected to Atzmus. Has nothing to do with Ak. Ak is detached. Ak is not Atzmus. What you're saying is that God can be and not be at the same time, and when you're connected to that, you're not defined by your choices. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the bechira that's not about, but it's not that black and white. It's much more complicated than you think it is. That's regarding purely atzmos, not regarding any of the levels of ishtalshlus. There's the question. Go over to Perek Samach. He asked this question specifically. He answers that Ak is removed. It's like saying the fact that that's why when God speaks, that can affect you, but when God thinks, He doesn't affect you.
So we can.
So he asked the question: doesn't God's thought create action? So he said no. Because God's thought is not like our thought, and He removed it. It shouldn't affect us.
And His speech is removed.
So in other words, yes, He can give life to your hand, and every move you make is without God's energy, you wouldn't have it. And He could remove Himself from your choice whether you're going to hit someone or not, God forbid. This is the essence of bechira.
And this is not part of Ak.
But I thought I always
Ak is a blueprint.
I was always taught that whatever you do is like a shadow in the Maila. So in other words, everything is preordained. I'm not
Tam Mal from the Magid is the opposite. That whatever is Lamaila is Memach, you affect Lamaila. But that's a whole different story. That's our actions affect heaven.
But there's also the other way that everything that you're doing in this world is really like a shadow, just like a mirror image of what's going on in life.
Not accept the choices of good and evil.
Bechira is a divine thing that we have.
Accept the choices of good and evil. Look, what you're talking about is one little aspect of it. There's a whole big picture, and not to talk about the big picture and just talk about what you're talking doesn't do justice to the subject matter.
Okay, whatever.
It's really not a topic for here. It's completely irrelevant to our discussion. As a matter of fact, it's just going to confuse matters. Because you go back to Perek Samach, that's where he talks about Bechira. Read chapter 60. How are you going to deal with that? Rabbi Rashab didn't know what you know? So why doesn't he answer what you're answering?
He chose not to express. Maybe he knew.
But he gives a different answer. But why did he give your answer? That you're not sure about, right?
I'm not sure about anything.
No, I'm saying so. The answer that satisfied you. I have to ask you a question. Why did Rebbe Rasham not give that answer? Because that answer doesn't apply except to Atzmus. It does not apply to Shtalshlus. And the Shtalshlus is not that way. Say the Shtalshlus is not that way. Say the Shtalshlus, it's a whole different story. Like, the famous question, if God knows what's going to be in the future, did it affect us? And the answer is no, it doesn't. What's the answer given? Why? Because God's knowledge doesn't affect our behavior. It's like from a distance. God knows beforehand what we know afterwards.
Right.
So that doesn't affect the doing. What you did affects the knowledge, not the other way around. That answer is given in Chassidus, right? And in the Farshim.
So where the Neira Lilo comes in?
Neira is a complicated sugi that should be addressed only after you get everything else. It's like talking about Atzmus without talking about, say, the Shtalshlus. Can you do that? You can't do that. Because what you're doing then is you're not going to appreciate it. You could say, why don't you just say Kol Yachol? God can do anything He wants. It's a contradiction. Who says, what's wrong with a contradiction? He knows, He runs the show, and He still gave you free will, and He'll punish you if you misbehave. Your issues are going to be a problem with what about Schar and Einish. There are people killed for their choices. How could you kill someone if it's all just a matter of...
I don't believe in determinism.
No, but I'm just saying, how's the reward and punishment if it's really not chosen?
Because we have a godly thing called Bechira.
No, but and if you choose the other way,
then
you will use consequences. Correct? Explain that.
I don't know.
Why should there be consequences? I'm telling you, it's what you're saying has a truth to it. I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's a completely different sugya, completely unrelated here. You guys want to talk about it? I have no problem one morning just talking purely about that.
Between us, from time to time we get stuck with the big picture, and we want,
I've got no problem.
I understand what you're saying. It's not related. It's this,
but it needs a discussion that begins from Aleph. You don't start from Tov.
Yeah. From time to time we're going to go back to Aleph and kind of like...
I've got no problems. I'd rather do it in a way in the morning. We start with that. We could talk about that for an hour. Mm-hmm. And either we learn or we don't learn. We'll even record it. Okay. But the problem is, for me, this is the classic, almost destructive to what we're doing here. How could you understand this when you're now somewhere else? Explain to me.
You're right, but it's a natural thing that happens to...
As if with this we figured out already.
You keep on drilling that.
We even have a Perek to refer to. What Perek was? Kuf whatever. Remember that says how one learns absorbs.
Right.
Do you think there'd be one sikha written down from Shabbos and Yontif if I did this when the Rebbe spoke?
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's just a natural thing that happens.
Yes. Do we want to schedule it sometime?
I have no problem. I could talk about anything. I've said this many times.
Let's do it.
I think we should do it from time to time, like once a month. Like the big picture lesson.
But I will tell you, however, if you had patience and learned this properly, you'd automatically understand that better, even though it's not the sugya right now. Because what you're doing is I don't call it selfish, but it's a form of just you are deciding what you want to talk about instead of listening what the Rebbe wants to say. If he wanted to say it, he'll tell us. I mean, that's the bigger problem I have. And frankly, I can talk about these things. You want me to talk about how did I come to understanding it? Because I did the exact opposite of what everyone's doing here. I didn't try to understand this. I tried to learn what was told to me. You learn what's told, and you slowly get it. Then you become more refined, and then you can understand things that are more complicated. Again, I have no problem talking about it, but I just wanted to I want to make the machor too at the same time.
Let's bring about it.
Look, part of learning is just like part of, you said things come up, this also comes from me naturally reacting. I'm just telling you how I react. That's it. I'm not against having a Chassidic session about Bechira. Whatever you want to call it.
This into our heads.
It's a method. To me, it's the way. If I did the Torah l'mivla le'polit, that's the bottom line.
We keep on drifting back to their old habits, which is not good.
I'm not even criticizing. It's not personal. We're talking here constructively how to think better, how to understand Chassidus better, and the way to do it is really to empty everything, hear it, and then you go back and we do it. Absorbing, absorbing, and then process.
It's true what you're saying, but we do run into these ideas. We don't know what they mean, so it would help to have it clarified.
Okay. Let's go back.
Here's a perfect classic example. There's the Chochmah and Bina. Chochmah is my approach that I'm telling you, and Bina is your approach. Bina there's the Yesh that wants to understand, and it's in its world. Chochmah is the place where you surrender, and you surrender to what is being said, to the emes that's being said, and absorbing it. And it's not about you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm almost all the time the same place that you're at. It's just that I know how to be in another place because I've trained myself. It's two different places. It's very, very different places. When you're standing in front of the Rebbe or in front of a Maimed, and you want to understand, you have to completely surrender and let it speak to you. The more you do it, the more you will be changed. The less you do it, if the more you there's there, the less the information will seep in. It's like a sponge. If you're a dry, empty sponge, you're going to get it all.
Is that the reason why
if you're too wet, the wetter you are, the less you're going to absorb. It's mamish the rule of everything.
Is that the reason why when we get older we absorb less because we have more to more?
100%, for sure. That's why children remember everything.
They don't surrender ourselves.
Children are a clean slate. You tell your child something, they'll remember forever what you said.
It comes imprinted.
Yeah. But and again, I hope everyone takes this. I have no problem at all with the discussion. I like the debates. It's good. It's because look, and I'm saying it specifically on the record because this itself, what we're doing now, is also training. This is also methods how you do things. And I'm not expecting. I look at times. There are times I remember when the Rebbe would speak and I would hear it, and for a second I would have like a unbelievable epiphany, and I had to completely shut it down. Like an answer to a big question, and I completely shut it down. Because I could always go back to it. I knew I could get it later, but what I have to get then, I will never get later. You understand? That was the point. I could always come back to that, hear it again, and then study it, and so on. And that takes a lot of bittul.
I think some push-ups would help here. Just get tired from being ourselves and just.
I think we do pretty
Morning
good.
workout.
Just listen.
Yeah, just
we have these ideas and
no
misconceptions. It would help us to.
Just for the record, I could give you an article that me and Yanki Taba wrote many years ago. The three explanations to the contradiction between Bechira and Hashgacha Pratis. And the third one goes to what you're talking about. But there's two others that are all relevant. They're basically Mamala Kalalman, Seviv Kalalman, and Atzmos. Those are the three main explanations, which I could discuss, as I said one morning when we talk. There's three different explanations in the union of so-called Bechira and Hashgacha Pratis. Ein Banach ist Freitag Banach.
So big is like huh?
Verbring doch, was meinst du, wo verbringen? But tonight? It's a late night, when you want to start, like 1 a.m.? Tomorrow I have a whole group coming from Irvine, Shal Shudis, I'm going to verbring with them. Afternoon. 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Yeah, but I have to check with the Alter Tenenbaum whether it's open to the public.
Oh, it's going to be like a closed session.
No, they come once a year. They come for a pilgrimage.
What is Irvine?
Irvine, California.
Southern California. No, it's a big city.
So why would it be?
It's called Orange County.
It's like Vilim or
No, he's bringing them, so it's like more,
more intimate kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be if one or two people came, it wouldn't be a big problem. I could ask him. Well, you're so hungry for Fabrenim?
I don't know, but now I got a little bit hungry, but who knows?
Well, listen, Shabbos morning we used to have nice get-togethers here. That's when we met. Anytime Shabbos morning is easy for me, relatively. Mm-hmm. But let's continue on. So Ak is in existence, but it's as I said, it's his blueprint, and it's going to be the Torah. Basically, is going to be related to this level. So now, after the Tzimtzum, we have now something that that you can say has already been put down in a so-called sketch form, but it's not yet a structure, which is Atzilus, a perfect structure. When Atzilus follows the guidelines of Ak, it's a perfect structure. You have Atzilus. When it doesn't follow the guidelines of Ak, it becomes Bri, Yetzir, Asiya, and the distortions. Let's put it that way. And here, Bechira cannot be answered because it's an atzmizdik thing. Here, Bechira has to be answered because it's removed. That's what he said in chapter 60. That Ak is removed because it's like a blueprint. The blueprint does not affect the structure. It will not tell the structure what to do, what not to do. You could not follow it, and you could or distort it. That's the bottom line. Listen, we cannot follow the Torah. God forbid. That's a choice we make. The question of Ak is not a question. The biggest question is Lifnei Tzimtzum and Atzmus, which is here. While the blueprint is not in the structure, the blueprint is so-called above it and beyond it. But when you talk about Atzmus, that's here. That's where you have to have a different type of question and challenge. So now let's continue. So now he's explaining why Torah is connected to Chachma of Ak. The Gabatera Nemakasha Yemer Moshel Hakadmeni. This we also had earlier. Remember where?
Very early on.
The Torah by Torah it says Kasha Yemer Moshel Hakadmeni. Where's that pasuk? Is it Daniel? Kasha Yemer Moshel Hakadmeni is not in Balak.
Is it Yemer to Yomer?
It says V'him Shel Moshel.
Yemer.
Okay, so what's the point? Kasha Yemer, when he said Kasha Yemer, so what does it mean? Kasha, when you will say the primordial metaphor, Moshel HaKadmeni. Kadmeni means primordial, like the original it's the ultimate moshel.
But it's no beginning.
I don't know how he's going to touch it. He's going to connect it to Adam Kadmon. I don't think no beginning. It means Kadmoni, original.
So that's the idea of Kadmoni.
Let's see what he says. He's going to touch. Who moshel ain't save Kadmoni shalelo. Kadmon b'chlal echad yochid Kadmon. Kadmon means Kadmon v'yesh. The first doesn't mean ain't sof necessarily.
It's not first before it. The first of the Kadmon.
But that's not what he's emphasizing right now. We'll see. Yeah, right. He's emphasizing the first, the original, I would say. Primordial. Shu moshel ain't save Kadmoni shalelo. It's a moshel, a metaphor for infinite Kadmoni shalelo. Kadmoni shalelo is a reference to the first cause of existence.
The first thing out of Atzmos.
Doesn't say it that way, but I would say Kadmoni shalelo means precedes existence and is like the beginning, the first cause, essentially. A kadmon means something that is precedes everything. The first, you could say a kadmon is the first. Kodem, something came before another. When you say a kadmon, you mean the first of all the firsts. The original, the kadmon. Yeah.
We're not counting Atzmos at all in this.
I don't know what Atzmos is.
Whatever it is, we're talking not Atzmos.
We're talking about
obviously the first thing.
Ak is Ak Atzmos. Okay, so that's all.
Okay, so there is a moshel on that.
Well, moshel hu levush kaneda. So what does it mean? Moshel kadmeni. So moshel is a garment, as it's known. So when we say moshel kadmeni, there's Ein Sof is the nimshel, is the moral. Is so-called the subject matter itself, And then you have a mashal to as a garment that allows us to hold on to it. It's like a handle. Metaphor. This is Chachmadak. She bechinas levush la'ein sof hamalubish bak. Because Chachmadak is a garment to the Ein Sof, the infinite light that manifests in Ak. So that's why Ak is a Moshla Kadmeni. Chachma is Moshla Kadmeni. V'zeh bechinas Chachma de Teira. That's Chachma de Teira. Essentially, the wisdom of Teira is a Moshel, an example, a metaphor for that which is higher than, which is for the divine infinite.
That's some job. So from before the Tzimtzum to after the Tzimtzum, some little.
You found it?
It's some little.
He talks about the Ak and Samach and that area, and he stopped talking about Teda. Same thing like over here. Right there.
Yeah. Va'inyan now begins a new subject matter. We're moving upward in the interface. So immediately jumps out. Didn't we just say? Look at the beginning of chapter 8, 162. Then look at chapter Kuf Samach. He's literally saying the same line on three different things: Atzilus, Teira, and now Ak. So Teira, you could say, because Teira is either Ak or Atzilus, but it's saying Mamish the same words. He just mentioned the same thing actually. In chapter Kuf Samach, so clearly this is going to have to be addressed, because they're both interfaces, but clearly different types of interfaces. He's going to answer this question, what I just asked, quite a number of chapters from now. I believe.
The Pashas can answer that even if you have 2-3 interfaces in the middle, they're all interfaces for the same level.
This I was definitely teaching already when I started. Yeah. I think this he answers in chapter either Kuf Samaches. He answers it later. He asks this question specifically. What is the difference between the Mutz of Ak and Mutz of Atzilus? But right now, Rebbe Rashab is introducing us now to the Mutz of Ak.
Any level between Atzilus and Ein Sof is a Mutz.
Correct, but still, when you say Yehinu Yedua, this is a Mutz. Nice, Yehinu Yedua, this is a Mutz. It begs the question: what's the difference between the Mutz? It's not a kasha.
Right.
Two different levels, but what's the difference? And what do you need both? What's the tzrichus? If you have one, what do you need the other? Obviously, we can speculate. I'm just pointing out as we're learning it how the flow is here. You can see from this how Ayin Beis is all interfaces. He keeps saying it. Now he's mamish saying it openly.
It has to be an interface between interfaces.
Absolutely, I told you it switches along the line. It's not a question. Anyway, any piece of engineering has how many interfaces? Millions. The body.
Vertical and horizontal.
They're all interfaces between Atzilus and Ein Sof. Right?
Ultimately, yeah, but still, you don't say Yedua that's a Memutza only on certain levels, because they're the primary ones.
Anyway, so all these three levels says Ein Sof and Nivroim, right?
They are, yeah.
Well, listen, let's learn it. So now Yedua that Ak is Memutza between Ein Sof and Neitzel v'Nivroim. The truth is, before, he only said Memutza between the Ein Sof and Nivroim, because Atzilus is a Netzel. Here, Ak is a Memutza between also the Netzalim.
Also, Batari says the same thing.
Right, because Teira is Ak. Exactly, that diuk. Okay, because there still he's talking Teira as an Atzilus. Before he got Chachma, he didn't get say this, what he's saying here. Look, we're moving upwards, basically.
Yeah.
We're moving upward, up the pipe.
Next floor.
V'hainu, what does this mean? Liye is the Ein Sof who ain't be'erach elam is klal. Because Ein Sof is not in any way commensurate, proportionate to the worlds at all. U'b'gdei sheyisava elam's Ein Sof tzarich li's b'mutza. Mam is the same word that he said in Kuf Samach. There he asked the question, if you remember, there has to be commonality. And the answer was Eira Gvul, Eira Bli Gvul. So it has to be mutza. And that's the level of Ak, that's an interface between the infinite light and energy to the worlds. I just want to add one more thing. The Rebbe Rashab is Rambam of Chassidus. There's the Rambam, he's gathering together, besides explaining it, also all the different sugyas, the different, how do you translate sugyas? The different topics or
in one topic.
Conversations, the different subjects that the Alter Rebbe established and were explained by the Rabbein before the Rebbe Rashab. So you could also see, when you start looking at the sources, these pieces, like Atzilus Mutza, Ak Mutza, this is language of the Alter Rebbe that he's just gathering together. That also explains why he could say something that seemingly, we just said Atzilus, why is it Ak? Because he's really bringing together a bunch of Mamorim, then he's going to explain it all. So there's also a type of compendium of essentially of all the Mumutzaim that exist. And when you study the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim, one second, especially the Tzemach Tzedek will actually point out that in this year the Alter Rebbe spoke about the Mamutzas and Atzilus, and this year he spoke about the Mamutzas and Ak. Not a contradiction; it's just that he was speaking different times, different aspects of Seder Shtalshlus. He was like basically laying out the map. But when you see the sources, you really appreciate the development of this. See, we just learn it. And the Rebbe Rashab said it.
He's putting everything into order, basically.
He's putting it into one big map. There's no question Ayin Beis came to do that. It's very clear. I'm constantly looking for the sources and I mark them and all that. You could see. Literally, I want to make soon a list of every mimer that the Rebbe Rashab so far has used and which perik is which mimer. It's fascinating. Like literally the years of the Alter, he's covering the years of the Alter, not in order of the years. It's all, but you could see that he takes a whole sugi. He'll take from, if the Alter Rebbe is speaking about Esses Firis in the year Tavkuf Samach Hey and Tavkuf Samach Ches, he'll bring it together. You could see that he's taking together the whole picture. It's mamish like the Rambam. What did the Rambam do? In Masechta Shabbos you have Halach Shabbos. You could also have Masechta Nida or Masechta Yavamis. You have a sugi on Shabbos. He brings it all together under one roof, under one section. So now that's what he says. What is it? Pedic Inyan Al Inyani. What's the lashon he uses there? Halachas. Essentially, that everything should be under one place. So you don't have to. Shas is essentially free association. Like it was like a group therapy. Everybody just said what they had to say. And it was and they argued and discussed and so on. And one thing led to the next.
It was a fi'ar subjects, though, according to Masechta.
Yeah. Generally speaking, yeah, for sure. But the Masechta Shabbos, I wonder how much of Masechta Shabbos actual is about Shabbos. Maybe I don't know if it's half, maybe it's more. I'm not sure. It always begins with it, but then goes. It's like a real farbrengen, like what we do here. When I'm not getting my way,
You drink the whole cup and just.
By the way, no, but you have to understand something. No, that's not a problem because when you're in a brainstorm mode, that is the right way. If we were in a brainstorm mode, I have no problem. It's a big thing in meetings. When you're in a brainstorm mode, you want everybody to say everything because you want to get the best from everybody. It's a difference when you're focusing on something. I have no problem. Brainstorm mode, we sit and that's Gemara's mama's brainstorm mode. No question about it. You could see. Sometimes the Tana will say to a student that the skin and Masechta Zu and Sugi Zu, don't bring another sugi. You'll have that, but very rarely. Which is always interesting. Why do they say that? They're constantly doing that. They're always saying, well, we learned this in another sugi like that. Because I guess there are times where you have to know whether now we're here and to bring that may not be relevant here. But Gemara is complete, I would say is the best hyperlinks exist. Gemara is hyperlinked. Everything is linked with everything. Huh?
It's not the Tanoim.
No, but Tanoim, but Braisos, the Mishnah is more concise, but the Gemara you'll find this.
There's a lot more Braisos than Mishnah.
Yeah, and there's more Gemara than Braisos. As it goes down from the head downward, the body gets larger. Yeah. Okay, he didn't explain. He just made the statement that since they're infinitely distant, you need to have an interface. Interestingly, we already answered the question: if they're infinitely distant, how could you have an interface that needs to have commonality? So we learned about but he's not mentioning that here. Now we have to understand. He is asking the question a little similar to that, but a little differently. How could you say Ak is a mamutza? She'll ask, how do we know Ak is a mamutza? Well, Ak is a mamutza is not the Rebbe Rashab's chiddush. She's quoting it. So his question is on. How could you say, Ak is mamutza? Ak is also be'en arech l'gabe ein sof. So how does it satisfy? It's like almost in different words the question he asked earlier. What it said is, Ak belongs on this side of the fence. It's also infinitely distant from ein sof. V'nikra adam debriya de klolos. And it's actually called in macrocosm adam debriya. It's briya. Kneda as it's known. Ule'el pei kuf samach. There we go.
In second, that's what he's bringing out to v'nikra adam debriya.
That is Bria. It's part of Bria. It's Ein Arech. Bria is Ein Arech to Ein Sof. It's part of creation, basically. It's the first step in creation, but it's part of creation. And earlier in chapter 160, 161 is Boyesh HaMamutzu HaEir HaNimshach Me'er Ein Sof. The Mamutza, the interface, is the energy that transmits, that is drawn from the infinite light. And he says, "Hein bechinas hakav, hein ha'er da'atzilis." Both the level of the kav, which is the ray of light that comes after the tzimtzum, and the energy of atzilis. Sheyesh boy beizin yonim. Well, I'm not sure where he's going with this. Let's see in a moment. Shabab bechinas midah gvula midah.
So he's saying before we said that
that the mamutza is not ak. Before we said the mutza is the air that nimshach from Neir Ein Sof, the kav, or the kav. Why? Because they have in them two things. This is kuf samachal, what we learned. The actual, what I just referred to, where he asked the question. So what was the answer there? No, it was the same question. Either it's gvul or it's bli gvul. And the answer was, it's not gvul down here. In Neir Ein Sof, there's eir gvul. That's what it says. Shesh b'beizin yom, shabab b'chin is gvul midah. This air of the kav or air atzilus has in it, as it manifests in parameters and measure. And it's also ain't safe because it's connected to the makkah, not like the kalim. We learned that. So basically, that answer is illegitimate. But Ak is not Ur, he's basically saying. You can't say this. Ak is not just a state of... There, the answer was that at the end of the day, Eir HaGvul. There's the Eir HaGvul. So the Eir HaGvul in Atzilus, or the Eir HaGvul in the Kav, is rooted in the Eir Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and that's Dovuk. So it's just another track of Ein Sof manifesting Eir HaGvul. But Ak is an entity. You call Ak a world. You don't just say Ak is not just Eir. Ak is an entity with an identity. Patsu Briyat Dover Mash and Sava. Like it says elsewhere, that Eir Bechlalo B'chinas Atzilus, that energy in general is the state of Atzilus. V'gimel B'chinas Biyah, and the three levels of Briyat Tzira Seder and B'chinas HaKelim.
In the general.
Right. They're level of Kelim. U'kumavur Sham, like it says, explained there in the Mokamacher, that B'kelim is Gimel Madregas U'B'Eir Dal Madregas. This is in the Drush Gimel Mini Adam, I believe, that I've referred to. And as explained there, the Kalim have three levels, that's Briyah, and the Eir, there's four levels.
Has Atzilus also?
Yeah. It's a Afasif, there's a few explanations in Reva, it's in Bolok. Yeah. Anyway, so what does this parentheses come to explain? That Ak, in the macrocosm, Atzilus, the Klolos, is before the Tzimtzum. So fine, that is Ein Sof. But Bria, the Klolos, is like Bria, the Pratis. It's already a creation. Ak, compared to Lifnei HaTzimtzum, is like Bria compared to Atzilus. So how could you call that a Mamutza? That's its role. Its role is to be Bria, the Klolos, the macrocosmic so-called creation. So how could you call that a Mamutza? So in other words, Ak is primarily, basically Kalim, is what he's saying here.
What's the Dal Madregas in there?
He says there that no.
No, but before he said the three worlds are Kalim. Maybe it includes
them
also.
And they all have auras.
I have to look inside. If I recall correctly, the Kelim are Chabad, Chagas, Nihi, and in Eir there's also a fourth level.
Teich, something.
We learned it before also, by the way. We had this already. We learned this point. Let me see something.
No, it's here. Right, so that's one level.
Four levels. Seals and Biyah.
Biyah is in the Kelim, okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
but it also has auras. It also has auras.
Yeah. He says, look on page Nun Gimel. Like 3.
Yes.
You see, I don't see.
Sand line.
Sand line.
8 lines.
Nun Gimel. I'll look it up and I'll tell you. In the Maimer, Rush Gimel Adam, he says it. I'm trying to remember. I think it's that the Kelim are Naran. The Kelim is Moyach, Lev, Kovid. Melech. In other words, Chabad, Chagas, Nihi. And in Eir, there's a fourth level that's like connects to the Eir itself. Like it has something higher than the I'm almost sure that's something like that. I have to remember exactly how he says it. Yeah.
Maybe in Atzilus there's 4 levels in the Eir.
The Rebbe brings it in many sikhs with Gimel Daled. Yeah. God. When he speaks about the months, Sivan and Tammuz, he speaks often God. Gimel Dalim. So he says Gimel, but sometimes it says Farket, that in Eir there's 3 and in Kelim there's 4.
Or maybe the 4 levels is Chachma Bina and then...
I have to look it up. Okay, let me look it up.
Maybe Chachma Bina and then Zohar and Machos, 4 levels? It's all in that.
It's in Partsufim. I'm not sure. I don't think so. Let's not guess. We'll figure it out in a second. But the point he wants to make here, that Eir B'chal is Atzilus. It answers what he said. What we learned before in chapter 161 is Eir. So Eir is no problem. But once you say Ak is Bria. And Bria is already part of creation. Kelim you never say is a Mamutza. You say Eir is a Mamutza. Because Eir has 2 Eirs. Has the Eir Bligvul, has both aspects to it. Has the connection to Bligvul and connection to... But Ak is already fundamentally a Keli. Even though there are really no Kelim in Ak yet. But compared, as Bria, it's Keli compared to what's higher than it. And how could you say that it's in a state of Mamutza? So here's the interesting difference. You see, before when we said Atzilus was a Mamutza, we're talking Atzilus both Prati and Atzilus Kloli. It has the element of it that's Elikus. Ak is the focus, even though it's higher than Atzilus Pratis, but it's Bria de Klolos. So Ak is focusing more on the creation aspect. Okay. Ak Ha'inyan.
So, it really has both elements.
Well, once he answers it, we'll understand it. Remember that the Shtalshalos works as in a hologram. Everything repeats itself on lower levels. So Atzilus the Pratis has a certain similarity to Atzilus the Klolos that's higher than Ak. Even though, relatively speaking, it's lower than Ak. But the question what you're focusing on. If you're focusing on Atzilus as opposed to Biyah, then it's basically divine emanation. Iyu v'chayu echad, iyu v'gamu echad. One, the energy is in a container. If you're focusing on structure, then Ak is the first aspect of the structure. So it just depends what you're focusing on. Even though, so technically, the Achdus, the unity in Iyu v'chayu echad, Iyu v'gamu echad is lower than the Achdus in Ak. But Ak, you're focusing on as a beginning of creation. You're not focusing on its unity. Obviously, he's going to answer all this. But this was a question. Yeah. Ak ha'inyan. The answer is Ak ha'inyan. However, the inyan is the be'emes harisav v'seil made in sof ha'idiyam ha'tzimtzum she'beid in sof. The truth is, the creation of the world made in sof is through the tzimtzum that was in Eir Ein Sof. So in other words, we have to talk about the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum precedes Ak. The Me'ein Ein Sof Atzmei, From the infinite light itself, and he's saying, from the Gili, that's the key, the Gili of Ein Sof, not from Ein Sof, period. Ein Sof can exist, but revealed, in a revealed state, it cannot exist. From infinite light itself, when it's revealed, it's all encompassing. It's omnipresent. So the world, you cannot at all create the worlds there. That guy there, Tzimtzum shenis alam ein sof, only through the Tzimtzum, where the infinite light was concealed. V'nasi savas shebe'ein arech klal. Then v'nasi became a creation that's completely infinitely distant because you remove the revelation. So therefore now something else can emerge in that so-called space.
Not saying Silicate, you're saying
Salam. Yeah. Well, it's b'derech siluk. He doesn't emphasize that here. Fine. V'zeu shegila arizal yinat tzimtzum shama kabbalah kedmim lo yodim v'zeh. Oh boy. Okay. There's going to be a very heavy Pedic, my friends. Where are we? What time do we have?
10:30.
I think I'm going to have to stop here because this is going to be a whole new sugya. But I'll just begin it and say, this is what Arizal revealed about the Tzimtzum that the previous Mukabalim, Kabbalists, the earlier Kabbalists, did not know of it. And they were explaining everything in the Shtalshalos in the form of cause and effect. So they did not know of the Tzimtzum, which creates a quantum leap. For them, they tried to explain the Shtalshalos all in form of measured leaps. Cause, effect, like a ladder. But the idea of a tzimtzum, a quantum, a radical paradigm shift, was not something. Was not something that they were aware of. We'll discuss later what does it mean they didn't know and so on, how that is all know. And it's known that Ilav Ol, cause and effect, is that there's some relationship, there's some proportion, some proportion and relationship and Ristavas and commonality between them. Ristavas, commonality. Like we learned before, chapter 149, the Gambi Ilav Ol, that also in cause and effect, even the cause and effect, remember there were two types of cause and effect, like Meichen and Midas were two separate, and there was teacher and student, same seichel.
Or a naf from the tree.
Yeah, like a branch of a tree is the same. But is also, he says, but even the ilav that's separate, yeah. Nevertheless, they have a commonality. They're both ethereal. That means that they're similar, comparable in their so-called state of their subtle state, their spiritual state, ethereal state. That's why the effect happens according to is commensurate or according to guided by the cause. So seichel and midas are two. Yes, it's not a branch and a tree, but it's not shalei be'erech. It's two. They're in the same reality, the same world. Here he goes. It's interesting. This he says outside the parentheses, when this is really what he says in Kuf Mem Tes. He's saying the Kamei Meichen is actually the example. Like the mind and emotion, the emotions are commensurate to the mind. And this is the difference in the emotions. And that's the difference which we also learned in the midas, in the emotions. If they come from the meichen, the intelligence within the emotions, we talk Yisrael Saba, the whole thing, or from the outer dimension of intelligence, or from the inner dimension. So in other words, we see the mere fact that there's levels shows you there's a relationship, deeper, less. The effect is it maturing the midas, everything we learned. Same as b'chol ilah v'ol. Same thing with every cause and effect. Sha'olu be'erech ha'ilah. Now, at the end of the day, all types of ilah v'ol. As soon as you say ilah v'ol, cause and effect, even if it's separate entities, there's a proportionate relationship. I think we should stop here because now he's going to go into explaining. One second. He's going to go into explaining this whole thing of how the Ramak understood Shtalshel is different than the Arizal. Let me just tell you where this is leading to. He's leading to come to explain the answer to the question, isn't Ak also a creation? So what kind of a Mamutza is it? So he's going to explain that Ak is a Mamutza once the Tzimtzum is existent. The Tzimtzum really deals with the issue of Ein Arech. You see? But the Chiddush, by the Ramak and the other Mekubalim, for them everything was gradations. And they have a problem because at the end of the day, how does Atzmus proportionate to the lower levels? The Arizal solves this problem by the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum deals with, the Tzimtzum so-called balances the equation of Ein Arech by simply concealing it all. So now you have a radical jump and you can begin so-called from scratch. So in that beginning, Ak will be a Mamutza. So to say Ak is a Mamutza to Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, no, not before the Tzimtzum. That's what he's going to answer basically. That's where he's leading to. I'm assuming it a bit, and I remember it a little, but
he still has to answer what's between Ein and Sof before the Tzimtzum.
Fine, that's why you have Atzilus. That's the Eira Gvul and Eira Bli Gvul. So that's why he's leading that Ak's Mamutza is going to be far more. Okay, so the next class is going to be Wednesday, because Sunday I'm leaving.
You have 2 trips, 2
back and forth, yeah. And I'm coming back Thursday morning, but it's going to be 10:30 when I return. Sunday I would have loved to make the flight later, but it didn't happen. Okay, so we did the beginning of chapter 164, page 328, 329. So you have a few days to study this and analyze it, and come back and we'll compare notes. Okay, that's that.